War. War never changes.
Some kind of war junkie?
Gentlemen, you can't fight in here. This is the war room.
Welcome to the War 102 podcast, where we explore the doctrine, theory, philosophy, and history of warfare. I'm your guide, Paul Darling, and I want to share what I learned in nearly 30 years in uniform. So let's get to learning about the most influential activity in human history, war. Welcome to episode 54, Kashmir, and why anybody cares. Forgive the musical indulgence, but it is a great intro. Two nuclear-armed countries are killing each other's young men again over a region that has almost zero significance economically, militarily, or culturally. Returning to our Clausewitz, passion is the third leg of that fascinating trinity that most often guides nations to war and men to battle. And it is exactly that which takes two supposedly mature countries to war. To understand Kashmir and why the current fight is happening, you have to understand India or Hindustan or Bharat, depending on which way you swing, and that will take a few minutes here. Etymology kind of matters here, so what is India? It's a Greek term, meaning people of the Indus River, and well predates Alexander the Great. Hindustan is, of course, the name Muslims gave to the land of the Hindus. Bharat, you may be surprised to learn, is arguably the most common name actual Indians, who don't call themselves that of course, give to the land in which they come from. There are probably a dozen names in total used throughout history by different people to refer to the general region in and around the Indian subcontinent. The origin of human inhabitation is prehistoric. The great rivers, predictable rains, and fertile valleys providing ample opportunity for Homo sapiens to thrive. The harsh desert to the west, impassable then and now Himalayas to the north and Indian Ocean to the south and east, insulating it from competition, largely until the Muslim conquest under Babur, whose original name was Zahir-ud-Din Muhammad. Prior to his conquest, the idea of a unified country was foreign to those who actually inhabited the subcontinent. The country was divided into innumerable princedoms that would probably be best described to the pre-Westphalian feudalism. Under Babur, who hailed from Uzbekistan and was a descendant of both Timur and, of course, Genghis, the expansive Mughal Empire was founded. But this was not the beginning of the Islamization of the region, which had begun in the 11th century as the converted descendants of the Mongol Empire in the Ilkhanate conquered the northern and western parts of the subcontinent and converted by ruthless sword. Moving south into the heart of the subcontinent, these were raiding and pillaging parties that sought less conversion and far more loot and treasure. The brutality so weakened the competing Hindu principalities that it allowed the rise of the Vijayanagar Empire. Yeah, that's the one and only time I'm trying to say that. Babur managed to combine the rather unified Muslim north and west with the Hindu south. Just as the Mughal Empire was crumbling, the British East India Company arrived, who conquered mostly by commerce, buying the various independent feudal rulers and slowly assembling a cohesive empire. But the Indian Rebellion in 1857 led not to independence, but rather the dissolution of the East India Company and the incorporation of what was then Greater India into the British Empire. While it would be tempting to dispense with the retelling of the British Empire and jump ahead to post-World War II independence movement, we must first discuss a few of the foundational aspects which led to both independence and partition. First up, the princely states of the British Raj. The legal status of these was one of independent sovereignty, but owing allegiance to the British Crown, again reminiscent of the feudal era. These exercised suzerainty, meaning internal affairs were at the discretion of the princes. The actual titles used numbered well into the dozens. By the time of partition and independence, there were 565 of these states in British India. Another is the two-nation theory. One may be surprised to learn that the two-nation theory is not an Arab-Israeli creation, but rather a Muslim-Indian one. It led first to the partition, prior to independence, of the state of Bengal into Muslim and Hindu Bengal. So displeased was the Hindu majority that the partition was removed only 3 years later in 1911. Despite the fact that India was comprised of dozens of various languages and ethnicities, the two-nation theory saw only two, Muslims and non-Muslims. So this movement sought to create a Muslim state carved out of India, dissolving any other considerations such as language or cultural affiliation. It was this movement that birthed the idea of Pakistan. There's no such thing as a Paki, though the term is often used, in derision at times, to describe those from this area. In fact, the name exposes the multi-ethnic nature of a purely political identity. The creator of the name was Chaudhry Rahmat Ali, who published a pamphlet in 1933 advocating for its creation. While Pak can be translated as pure in Farsi, the name was a rough acronym meant to convey the main principalities and regions that should comprise this theoretical nation: Punjab, Afghan, and here Afghan is being used synonymously as Pashtun, and not incorporating the various other ethnicities found in the current state of Afghanistan. And then we had Kashmir, Sindh, and Baluchistan. So when someone asks whether Kashmir is part of Pakistan, by definition, it obviously is. The fact that the name Pakistan was just a 20th century creation of a Muslim nationalist notwithstanding. So when India gained independence, while at the same time being carved into pieces, why did the namesake not join the Muslim half? Kashmir itself was traditionally a small area in a valley between the Himalayas and the Pir Panjal Range. It now includes a far greater area of Jammu, Ladakh, and the Indian-controlled areas, as well as Azad Kashmir and Gilgit-Baltistan controlled by Pakistan. Little known is the fact that the communists of China control the areas of Aksai Chin and Karakoram Tract in the greater Kashmir area. In 1845, the British Sikhs went to war, and Gulab Singh wisely chose to vaguely ally with the victorious British, whereon he literally bought Greater Kashmir from the British. The bill of sale still exists. This greater region was largely Muslim, with both Shia and Sunni, but also included Tibetan Buddhists, a Brahmin Hindu minority that had disproportionate influence, and, of course, Sikhs. During the Indian Rebellion 10 years later, Kashmir, under the Singh family, again aligned with the British, who granted suzerainty to Kashmir's rulers. Hari Singh had ruled Kashmir since 1925, when India was divided into two entities and abandoned by Great Britain following World War II. When the Maharaja, as the Singhs were titled, wavered in abandoning his rule to the new Pakistan government, Pakistan launched a terrorist attack to remind him where his loyalty should lay. Appealing to the disinterested British, Lord Mountbatten said, "Talk to India," which he did, at which point the Indian army entered Kashmir at the request of its ruler and drove off the Pakistani militants. But nothing in this world is free, and the price for independence from Pakistan was absorption into Greater India. In the end, the Singhs lost their independence and title, but only to a different country than was assumed in a region three-quarters Muslim. The UN, newly formed, yet fully incorporating its incompetence and incapability, mediated an agreement which determined a plebiscite should be held, which India agreed with provided Pakistan's military had fully evacuated the area, which they had not done. In the end, Pakistan had a peace, India had a peace, and no vote by the people was ever held. As for the Chinese-held territories, they are largely uninhabited. As a nod to geopolitical realities, China recognizes Pakistan's claim to Kashmir, and Pakistan cedes gladly the two northernmost regions to China officially. India sees all of Kashmir as part of its territory. China and Pakistan both see India as a primary threat, and, under the theory that the enemy of my enemy is my friend, they unite in regards to India, despite China's open oppression of the Uyghur Muslims, who constitute essentially the sole inhabitants of China's Kashmir holdings. So why the current war? The most recent fighting still going on, despite claims of a ceasefire, is the direct result of a horrific terrorist attack. Muslim terrorists from the Pakistan-based Lashkar-e-Taiba entered the Indian-controlled area and attacked a group of tourists. Those men incapable of reciting the Muslim Declaration of Faith were shot in front of their families. 26 were killed with another 20 wounded. While Pakistan officially condemns the organization, the Pakistani ISI, their intelligence agency, is the primary sponsor of Lashkar-e-Taiba, allowing them to attack India with plausible deniability. Much of the impetus for the most recent attack was India's revocation of a special status for the portions of Kashmir it controls. Prior to 2019, Kashmir, while part of India, continued to enjoy a sort of de facto suzerainty, according to the Indian Constitution. Residents of Kashmir could not relocate to other parts of India, and likewise Indians could not move to Kashmir. Needless to say, opposition within Kashmir was vociferous, and Pakistan's government was apocalyptic. Pakistan made the date of the revocation a national holiday they called the Day of Exploitation. The attack on non-Muslim tourists was a direct attempt to intimidate those who would think to move to Kashmir from other parts of India. So why are two nuclear-armed nations willing to go to war over a hunk of barely farmable land whose only notable export, ridiculously comfortable wool, has been replaced by Chinese farmed equivalents? For Pakistan, whose name explicitly demands Kashmir, it is both a source of nationalist pride as well as the seeming inability for Muslim majorities, or even significant minorities, to accept rule by any other faith. This carving out new nations from old ones has been a bit of a trend since World War II. Initially, the splitting of countries had a refusal of America and Russia to return to status quo antebellum following a supposedly temporary occupation of defeated nations, East and West Germany, North and South Korea being notable examples. We discussed the splitting of Yemen in an earlier episode to provide a temporary relief to nationalist pressures, allowing Great Britain to maintain control of the port at Aden. Pakistan and Israel were created at roughly the same time and by the same dissolution of the British Empire. While the refugees from the latter's creation continue to be news today, over 20 million refugees were created when Pakistan was created, and millions died in the initial conflict. But because both nations largely integrated these refugees, they were a temporary, though massive, tragedy. In more recent times, Kosovo became a new nation and a new ethnicity was created, the Kosovar, which are simply Albanians who occupied that previously Serbian territory following the Ottoman Empire's conquering of the Orthodox Christian state and importing their co-religionists to occupy it. Unless you think these partitions are only for the benefit of Muslims, South Sudan and East Timor were carved out of Muslim nations to provide nations to Christians, who chafed under Muslim rule. So we are torn on a model which supposedly treats national borders as sacrosanct, but can carve out exceptions at will for ethnic self-determination. As noted previously, this hypocritical lack of international standards leaves open the simple right of the strong to exercise the Malian rights at the expense of the weak. Ukraine again comes to mind. So having explained my theory behind Pakistan's interest in the region, why India? Well, because you either defend your territory or you don't. And to a no small degree, the fact that India is the third largest Muslim country with a population of over 200 million, to abandon their sovereignty and claim to Kashmir would most certainly lead to more states with significant Muslim populations to demand independence or joining with Pakistan to the west, or Bangladesh, formerly known as East Pakistan, to the east. And should terrorist actions cause India to abandon Kashmir, they would most certainly be subjected to more terrorism throughout India, and not merely in Kashmir. But regardless whether my analysis is correct, the fact remains both Pakistan and India are willing to go to war with each other over Kashmir. So how will these wars be fought? Pakistan will continue to terrorize Indian civilians with a twofold objective, one of which I believe irrelevant. First, they want to dissuade any non-Muslims from living in Kashmir. With a large and very safe India already available to them, this is not a bad strategy. Which is why after the murder of 30 Indian tourists, India responded immediately and resolutely. If they cannot protect their own citizens in their own country, India has already lost sovereignty over the region. We would simply be discussing how long until Pakistan finally claims its partial namesake. Second, copying the strategies of anti-colonialism utilized in Algeria and Israel, they want to provoke India into a military action that they can turn into a condemnation that will then marshal international pressure on India. This is a fool's errand. While Pakistan can claim India is a colonialist power in Kashmir, since they aren't Europeans, no one cares. The UN and EU are not going to go after India for colonialism. That sin is reserved exclusively to the ethnic Anglosphere and Western European countries. All other nations are free to do as their strength allows. India's strategy is twofold as well. The first, as we are witnessing, is to respond disproportionately strong to any terrorist action and blame, with much justification, Pakistan and its ISI. While Pakistan may think it's clever in denying its involvement, India won't be fooled, and as noted, the international community doesn't care as long as nukes don't fly. They will target Pakistan infrastructure that is disproportionately important or expensive, as killing 10,000 Pakistanis won't mean anything to the government of Pakistan, and in fact only reinforces Pakistan's own strategy. All civilian casualties will be collateral damage. Whereas Pakistan's strategy is to maximize civilian deaths, both Indian and their own, this provides no benefit for India. The strategies are mutually exclusive. As for India's second strategy, with the removal of the special provisions for Kashmir in 2019, they will incentivize non-Muslims to move to Kashmir and slowly denude its Muslim character. As noted, countering this was most likely the primary objective of the terrorist attack this year. The really important question is, will the nukes fly? To which I respond with a resolute maybe. They could. When India and Pakistan first went to war after both acquired nuclear weapons, this question was asked. A story I heard from a source whom I like and respect, but has absolutely no clue whether it's true or not, went something like this. The Pakistan foreign minister informed his counterpart that Pakistan could kill 400 million Indians tomorrow should they not relinquish Kashmir. To which the Indian foreign minister replied, "We could accept that." The war concluded in India's favor soon after. India is a massive country geographically and the largest country on earth by population, recently surpassing China in that metric. India has no need to use nuclear weapons first, as Kashmir is theirs and Pakistan cannot conventionally dislodge them. Should Pakistan decide to instigate a nuclear exchange, nothing would stop India from completely destroying their Muslim neighbors, and would be more than happy to do so should it be in retaliation. So for the nuclear question, my answer is that, yes, that unhinged leg on the stool that is passion could lead to a nuclear exchange, but it wouldn't benefit either country. So the odds of the exchange are low, 20% if I was forced to put a number on it. So sleep tight, everyone. With that, I pivot again next week to the other Indians and a request from a listener and a new subscriber, Austin, where I look at the successful counterinsurgency that was the American Indian Wars of the post-Civil War era. Thanks for joining us today. If you liked what you heard, please like, subscribe, rate, and comment. Most importantly, share with your friends. Join the conversation at the War 102 subreddit, and check out the War 102 Buzzsprout website for links to more information and supporting videos. Send me an email at war102podcast@gmail.com. I look forward to your comments and hope you join us again next week. See you then.